See, now we are going to discuss persistent volume, third type of volume, that is persistent volume. Why are we using persistent volume? In order to resolve the issue that we are facing in host path. Here, if you lose your base machine, you will lose your data. So is there any way that I can protect my data even if I lose my base machine? For that, we have a concept called persistent volume. Persistent means what? What is the actual meaning of persistent? Persistent means long last, forever. The one that you will never lose. That is what persistent. Let me show you what actually we do here in persistent volume. PV we call, okay? This is my base EC2 instance. That's what host machine. On top of that, we are going to create a pod inside container. Here we are going to take separate volume, additional volume. You remember, right? While launching EC2 instance, we have selected 8 GB hard disk, 8 GB drive. That is what volume. Like that, we are going to take additional volume from AWS. Additional volume from AWS, which is nowhere connected to our EC2 instance. It is a standalone volume completely. It has no relation with our EC2 instance. In AWS account, separately, we are going to create one volume. What kind of volume? You know, right? It's EBS volume. Elastic Block Store. Again, going back to AWS basics. In our first class, we have already discussed. It is what? EBS volume. Elastic Block Store. Correct? So in this volume, we are going to create PV object. PV object. Let's say it has, let's say 20 GB. In that, I'm going to create, let's say 2 GB object. 2 GB. What is this 2 GB? PV, persistent volume object we call. In that again, we need to create PVC. PVC, persistent volume claim. C means claim. Right now, 2 GB, it's a kind of cake. In that I cut this piece of cake. Now in that right now, how much I want? That is what persistent volume claim. Let's say in that, I want only 1 GB. This is PVC, persistent volume claim. Let's say it is 1 GB. We'll create one folder here that we connect to that persistent volume claim object. Okay, so that is how it is. Let me explain. Here first we create EBS volume. Then in that we create persistent volume object. In that again persistent volume claim. Persistent volume means in this entire EBS volume, this is the storage 2 GB which is allocated to you. To you means to this machine for my purpose. In that right now how much I want? 1 GB. That is what persistent volume claim. Understanding, right? This is a cake for everyone. In that you got a piece of 2 GB. In that you got a piece of 2 GB. That is completely yours. But in that how much you want to eat right now? That is what persistent volume claim. Okay, now I want to eat only 1 GB. Okay, after that again, I can eat another GB as well. This is total volume size. In that, this is persistent volume object. In that, persistent volume claim. Object means how much storage that they have given to you. In that, how much you are using right now. So in that, let's say one more PV object that they may give to some other person. This one to maybe other person. Like that, they have given this much 2 GB to you. In that, how much you want right now? You want to consume right now. That's what persistent volume claim. This is persistent volume. This persistent volume claim. How much you are claiming right now. Okay. So right now that I'm mapping to this directory. So what actually happens when you put some data that will be actually stored here. Generally what you can do, you can have, let's say, one more pod. You can have one more pod. In that one more container, if you want one more container, you create one more directory, and that one you can map to remaining 1 GB if you want. You can have one more claim in that, you can map. So if you want one more GB, then already 2 GB is over here. Correct? Again, you need to create one more PV object. In that, again, you need to claim. I hope you are understanding. Let me just summarize here. This is your base machine. This is EBS volume of 20 GB, base EC2. So in that, 2 GB, persistent volume of 2 GB. I have a pod container. In that, I'm going to have persistent volume claim, PVC of 1 GB. This I'm going to attach to this particular directory. So whatever data I keep here, that actually will be kept here. Let's say I can have one more pod inside one more container having one more directory. Then what you can do, you can have one more persistent volume claim that you can map to this one, so that whatever data you keep here, that will be stored here. Fine. Suppose if you have one more pod, what you do, already you reach your PVC, then you create one more PV object. One more PV object. In that, again, you create one more PVC, persistent volume claim. Again, you use it. Okay. Not so difficult. Let me show you. So what are the steps which are involved? First, we need to create one EBS volume. So let's do it now. Again, I'll draw here. This is my base machine. Base EC2 instance. First, let me create one EBS volume of 20 GB. 20 GB. And very, very important thing. The availability zone in which your EC2 instance is there, you create this EBS in the same availability zone. Wherever your EC2 instance is there, you create EBS volume also in the same availability zone. Okay. So let's create one EBS volume. I'm in AWS account. This is in which availability zone? 1A. You can see 1A. Now scroll down. Where is volumes? You can see volumes here. Select. These 25 GB, this is my root drive. Root volume belongs to my Kubernetes instance. What is another 8 GB? That belongs to my other EC2 instance, which is in stopped state right now. Okay, see, that is a Docker instance related to other batch, other DevOps batch. So apart from that, apart from these two, what I'll do, I'm creating new volume. Now here you can see create volume. Create volume. What size that you want? So right now I would like to go with 20 GB. 20 GB. Make sure availability is on A, because my Kubernetes instance also is in availability on A. Yeah, that's it. Now create volume. Hit refresh. I have created one volume that is of this 20 GB. So what you can do, better you change the name so that you will remember. My EBS -VOL. If you observe carefully, remaining two volumes which are connected to our EC2 instances, you can see in use, means those are connected to EC2 instances. But here it is showing just available. It is there, but it is not connected to any of the instances. It is standing alone separately. It is nowhere related to our EC2 instance. Correct? That means here, even if you lose your base machine, still your data is safe. Understanding, right? Here you can see. Even if you lose your EC2 instance, then you lose all these pods, still your data is pretty safe here. So we have created one EBS volume. Please remember this. I mean, you don't have to remember, but every volume will have one unique ID. You can see this is what? Volume ID. Volume ID. This one. Remember this volume ID, because we are going to use this one to connect. Then what we need to do? We need to create PV, persistent volume, from the 20 GB. So for that, let me create one manifest in which I'm going to paste this script. I have pasted the script. Now let's try to understand what is happening here. Object type, persistent volume. This is one of the Kubernetes objects. That comes under version V1. Name of the volume, my EBS volume. Whatever name that you want, you can give. That is your wish. See, these are fixed thing. You have to mention as it is whenever you create persistent volume object. Here, only thing that you can change, that is this one. What size that you want. Okay, here I have mentioned clearly for your understanding. Out of 20 GB of EBS, I want 1 GB as PV object. Okay, that means right now, I want from this, I want 1 GB. This is what persistent volume object you can call. 1 GB. This size is 1 GB. Fine. Now other things, see, read, write once. These are fixed. You have to mention as it is. These things you don't have to change because here I have mentioned, you can see. Read, write once means what? You can attach this one at a time only to one instance. This persistent volume you can attach to only one instance at a time. So I'm attaching to REC2. I'm attaching to instance means what? Not directly I'm attaching. I'm connecting to pods which are running on one instance. That is the meaning. Then what is this persistent volume reclaim policy delete? If at all, if we delete this persistent volume object, if we delete, then inside data also should be deleted. That is the meaning. Okay, again, that's a fixed one. File system type, ext4. What is file system? We have different file systems. First of all, tell me one thing, guys. I mean, you know, right? What is a format? What is the meaning of format? Format. Format means what? You must be thinking, so I deleting the data. I have given one pen drive to you, and if I said, hey, format this pen drive, what do you mean by that? Deleting the data? That is the actual meaning of format? No, that is not the actual meaning. In the process of formatting, data will get deleted. But actual, what is the meaning of format? Simple, guys. Let's say you have plot. Land is there, plot. Can you live on that plot? Land, okay, plot, PLOT, plot. No, you need to construct one building. In that building only, you need one house, you need to construct one house. In that house only, you can live. Correct or not? You can't live on that land. Correct? You need to construct one building. So here also same thing. When you have raw data, be it a drive or pen drive, let's say pen drive, you can't store the data directly. You need to construct one building. You need to construct that construction we call format. Format. So required, tracks will be created. Tracks will be created when you format. We have different types of, you can construct different types of buildings. Here also we have different types of formats are there. One is ext4, popular one. Okay, sectors, tracks and all like that. Now you can store the data. Data would be stored in these blocks. Okay, format means creating building, house. That's the meaning. Means here creating tracks, sectors, everything. So that in which you can store the data. Let's say if I said, hey, please format. If I said, please, I mean, that's why when you create a pen drive, by default, we get in a formatted state. Means already these tracks and sectors will be there. These tracks and sectors will consume some storage. That's why, let's say if you purchase pen drive of 8 GB, can you use entire 8 GB? No. In that, it shows data of only space of 7 point something 990 something. What about remaining 10? That will be consumed for these tracks and sectors. Okay. Let's say if I said you already stored some data. I said, hey, please format the pen drive. Then what you are doing, you are demolishing this building. You are constructing again new building. Even though similar type, but you are constructing new building. Obviously, when you demolish, the data will be deleted. Correct or not? Data will be deleted. Correct or not? So you are constructing new building, again fresh building. Again that's blank. Again you store the data. So formatting means deleting these tracks and sectors. In that process, data will get deleted. That's why sometimes generally, when you unable to delete the data, sometimes it won't allow you to delete the data because of any reason. That time we format means forcefully deleting. Kind of means not actually deleting the data, demolishing entire building itself. In that process, inside data will get deleted. Again, we format. That's what. When you format, the existing one will be deleted, new house will get constructed. Again, we have blank space, then you can store the data. That is actual meaning of format. So popular format types are there. One is ext4. These are default one for EBS volume. Now here we have to give the volume ID. Volume ID. So what is our volume ID? We can copy from here. This one, you can see this one. You can directly copy. You can see if you just click here, that will get copied. Copy. And here, just delete this one. We have to paste volume ID. That's it. Come out of it. That means here, we are creating a PV object with the size of 1 GB from this particular volume having 20 GB. I'm repeating. I want PV object having size of 1 GB from this particular volume having 20 GB. Got it? That's it. Now let's apply kubectl apply -f my EBS PV. That's it. Okay, now here this object got created. In that object, how much right now you want? How much you want? Maximum how much you can take? You can take entire 1 GB max. Max 1 GB only you can take at a time. Because that size, you got a cake of 1 GB, you can eat only 1 GB only, right? If you want more, you need to again ask, correct or not? Here also maximum how much you can claim 1 GB. Okay, let's say I want to claim entire space. Entire space, this much. This blue color. That is what? PVC. How much you are demanding? I want entire 1 GB. For that again, we need to create one more manifest for persistent volume claim. So let's create a manifest. PVC, see EBS PVC, persistent volume claim. Here my EBS PV, persistent volume. I mean, these are just manifests. Whatever name you want, you can use your wish. I've pasted. Now observe carefully. Now object type is persistent volume claim. It is another object. The name I'm giving to this object is my EBS claim. You can give any name. That comes under version 1. And read write once the same means it should be connected to the pods which are running on one machine at a time. Now here 1 GB. 1 GB. We are mentioning. You must be thinking, Sai, here GI it is showing, actually it should be GB. Guys, going forward, I will explain later on in one class. GB means gigabytes. GIB we call gigabytes. In AWS, everything they are giving as gigabytes. If you see here, what is GIB? Gigabytes. GB means gigabyte. There is a small difference between GIB and GB. Let me show you. GB versus GIB. There's a small difference. So GIB is slightly larger than GB. Small difference. That is what? 0.74 something. 0.74 something. So in AWS, they are giving us GIB, gigabytes. MB megabyte. MIB we call mebibyte. KB kilobyte. KIB kibibyte. Okay, in AWS, they are giving us gigabyte, mebibyte, like that. So the small difference, but that's okay. You can think of GB. See, here I want the claim of 1 GB from, am I mentioning anything related to this PV? No. I am saying that I want volume having 1 GB. That's what I am claiming from for my pod from any available PV objects. Any available PV objects. So you don't have to mention from which PV object. From any available PV objects, it will take. That provision they have given. So if you have multiple PV objects, so it will take wherever it finds that much of storage is there, it will take from that. Okay. So right now we have only one, it will take from that only. Fine. Now let's apply kubectl apply -f EBS PVC. That's it. Now if you want to see these things, If you want to see your persistent volume, kubectl get PV, persistent volume. Now, PVC, it shows persistent volume claim. Let me explain here. Now you can see, right? This is our persistent volume claim. When you give PV, it shows PV claim object as well. See here, whatever object you can see, persistent volume object, volume claim of that it is showing here as well. Okay, of 1 GB. Okay, when you give PV, it shows PVC as well. So, I mean, that's what, focus on this one. This is persistent volume. And in that, we are claiming this one, 1 GB, the whole amount we are claiming. And this is the name of persistent volume claim, right? Remaining things, whatever we have mentioned, right? Read and write once, right? The same thing here showing, read and write once. That's okay. Other things you don't have to worry. I mean, those are the default things. Now, coming to the actual thing that we are going to create pod now. So here I'm creating pod with a deployment object. So I'm creating one manifest in which, let me paste this script. See, I'm creating deployment object. It comes under apps/v1. And you can give any name. I'm giving a name, EBS PV deploy, any name, that's your wish. So how many pods that I want? One pod. Okay, one pod. This should be created from which template? This template. This should be created from this template. That's why you can see whatever key value you are giving, that should match with this one. In that, as someone asked in previous class, Sai, is it mandatory? If you want, you can remove. Because in some manifest I have mentioned, in some manifest I did not mention. If you want, you can remove it. That's not mandatory. Mainly, this should match with this one. So that it will take this template only. This template. In that, what I'm doing, I'm creating one container. In this pod, I'm creating one container. In that, I'm just printing something. Okay, container is running. I'm creating one container. Name will be taken by default, as you know. Deployment object create replica set creates pod. Correct? So pod will have replica set object name and deployment object name as a prefix. That already you know. In that pod, I'm creating one container C01. C01. Now in that, just I'm printing container is running. That will be printed. This is what log will run by taking break of 1000 seconds. This will be printed again 1000 seconds. So the loop, while loop that runs continuously. That already, this also you know already. Here you have to give claim name, persistent volume claim name. Whatever claim object we have created. See, my EBS volume claim. Let me show you. Remember this name, cat EBS PVC. What is the claim name? My EBS volume claim. How much you are claiming? 1 GB? For this persistent volume claim object, what name you have given? My EBS volume claim. This particular name we have given, this particular claim name we have given here. And inside container, under temp, one folder should get created. Container volume. CONTVOL. So here I am creating one folder. Under temp directory, VOL. This is a folder. And this claim name is my EBS volume claim. My EBS vol claim. This is the name. What is the actual name? This one. My EBS vol claim. Okay, this blue color area. Fine. Now this EBS volume claim is acting like a volume. Correct? For this, I am giving a name called my volume. Whatever name you want, you can give. So whatever name you are mentioning, you give the same name here. My EBS volume, this claim object name, I am giving my volume. My volume. Correct? So here also I am giving the same name. You can see my volume. That means I am saying that, hey, container volume, go and get connected to this volume called my volume. That means this will be mapped. Like this. Fine. That's it. Over. Remaining things are fixed. You have to just remember it as it is. We have to mention. Whatever I have explained, only these things we are going to change. And for your understanding, I have mentioned clearly. See, name of the persistent volume, volume claim, and PV claim that we created earlier. So just for your reference, I have mentioned. Let's come out of it and let's apply this one. So kubectl apply -f EBS deploy. EBS deploy. That's it. So we have created. Now kubectl get all. You can see deployment object we have created. It has created one replica set. Replica set created one pod. So how to test this one? We will go inside this container. Here we create any one file. In this particular folder of this container, we create any file, something. So when you create something, that should get stored actually here, right? That should get stored here. Let's do it first, then I will explain. Go inside this particular pods container. See, I'm going inside here. What is the pod name? This is our pod name, correct? Copy this and paste here. So I'm going inside this pod. I'm not giving container name because it has only one container, so you don't have to give. Okay, I'm going inside pods container. Inside, under temp directory, you should be able to see container wall folder. So cd temp, do ls, see container wall folder. Now go inside this cd container wall. Here, I'll create any one file. Okay, let's create a file called DevOps file. Cat DevOps file. Here I'm keeping some content. Hello, DevOps. Okay, I kept some small content. Cat, I mean, you can't edit, right? You can't give backspace again. Let me do it again. Enter Control D. Now open that file, cat DevOps file. So I have created this file in this folder. Means actually that file will be stored here. Correct or not? But can you go and verify? Can you go and verify in this volume? No, you can't go inside the volume directly. You can't go. There is no provision of going inside the volume. Then how to test? What we'll do? We will terminate this particular pod. Okay, let's terminate. So how to terminate? See, just come out of it. Exit. kubectl get all. I'm going to terminate this entire pod. kubectl delete pod. Kubectl delete. Sorry, you cannot give pod twice. Kubectl delete pod, either space or slash. See, when you delete pod, new pod will get created. Correct or not? You are deleting pod means you will lose your container inside that container volume folder inside the data as well. Correct. But what I said, when you store some data, that actually will be stored here. It's kind of soft link. When you put some data, actually the data would be stored here. Okay. Now I have deleted this entire pod. I don't have a pod now. In place of this, new pod will get created. That's what deployment object does. Correct or not? Now if you verify kubectl get all, old pod we have deleted v99. In place of that, new pod got created. So new pod also will be created with this template only. Means in new pod also, you will have this folder container volume that will be mounted to this my volume. New pod will be mounted. So that means you can think of it as a new pod, not old one. So this will be mounted here. When it gets mounted, that file is here. That means that file you should be able to see here as well, right? Correct or not? Okay, that file you should be able to see here. Yeah, very well. You go and verify. You should be able to see that file. I'm going inside this particular new pod. This is my pod name. That's it. Now go inside temp. cd container wall. Do ls. Yes, you can see DevOps file and cat DevOps file. Understood? That is how things work. Okay. Let me explain once again. Let me summarize what actually we have done. I'll explain now. Focus on pink color. We have created initially with the help of deployment, we have created one pod inside container. inside this folder that we map to this PVC, persistent volume claim object. Then we have created one file. That file actually got stored here. Then what actually we did? We have deleted this pod. That means this entire pod got deleted. In place of that, new pod got created. That's what deployment object does. New pod got created inside new container inside that new folder with the same name, and that also mounted to this one. Mounted means that means whatever data you kept here, that you should be able to see from here. Correct? So that is what we are seeing right now here. That means here, even if you lose your container, or even if you lose your pod, even if you lose your base machine, still your data is pretty safe because that data we are storing somewhere outside, which is not at all connected to our EC2 instance, which is completely independent. So even if you lose your EC2 instance also, still your data is pretty safe. That is what persistent volume we call. The whole concept we call persistent volume. In that, you have to remember three things. First, you have to create EBS in that persistent volume object, in that persistent volume claim object. Repeating, you create EBS volume, then from that you create persistent volume object, from that create persistent volume claim object. To that claim, we are going to map our containers folder. Got it? Simple. That is what persistent volume. Okay. Now what you do, let's say already you have consumed this one. You create one more object. You create one more persistent volume object. Let's say you have one more pod. Then you map that one to this. Here you create again claim. When you create a claim, it will take from any available persistent objects. So since it is there, it will take from here. Okay. Just come out of it, exit. Now how to delete these things? You have to delete all these things. You do it in a reverse way. You create a deployment object. First you delete that one. Then you delete the persistent volume claim. Then you delete persistent volume. Then you delete EBS. If you are going like this, you have to come like this. Okay, initially we created EBS first, PV next, PVC next, deployment object next. You delete in a reverse way. That's a good practice actually. So let me delete all these things one by one. First, delete deployment object. See EBS deploy. We have deleted. Then delete persistent volume claim, EBS PVC. Then finally, delete persistent volume. That's it. Then after that, don't forget to delete your volume, EBS volume. You can see this EBS volume. Now actions, delete volume. You can say delete. And type here delete for confirmation. That's it. Clean. So yeah, that's it for today.